We must ensure that no one finds out about this. The operation cannot be compromised by anyone. Make sure she does not leave this floor. We must proceed with the termination immediately.
No one can know about this.
Make sure it's done tonight.
They're going to kill me!
7 days before her due date, 24-year-old Amara Okafor overheard a sentence that turned the hospital room cold. The child leaves with the Kang family. The voice came from the other side of the door. Not loud, not angry, calm, professional, like they were discussing the delivery of expensive artwork instead of a human life. Amara froze with one hand resting over the gentle curve of her stomach. Her daughter kicked, almost as if she had heard it too. The voices continued. The mother will receive financial compensation. There will be legal resistance. Our attorneys are prepared. And Mr. Kang? Pause. He has not been informed of every detail. Amara's heartbeat stumbled. Not informed. The only name that mattered echoed inside her mind. Kang Min-jae, the billionaire, the father of her unborn child. The man who had once promised that no one would ever decide her future for her. Yet his family was already deciding the future of their baby. She quietly stepped away from the door before anyone noticed she had heard. By the time her obstetrician entered 5 minutes later, Amara was smiling politely. She said nothing, because sometimes survival begins with silence. If emotional stories that keep you guessing are your kind of journey, take a second to like this video, subscribe to the Afro-K Tales, and tell us in the comments, what would you do if you discovered someone was already planning your child's future without asking you? Now, let's begin. 8 months earlier, Seoul in early spring smelled like cherry blossoms and fresh rain. Amara had arrived from Lagos with 2 suitcases, a scholarship, and exactly 300,000 won in her wallet after paying her apartment deposit. She wasn't chasing luxury. She was chasing a degree in international business that her late mother had dreamed about long before illness took her away. Every morning she attended lectures. Every evening she worked at a quiet bookstore cafe tucked between 2 old buildings in Jongno. The pay barely covered rent. But the elderly owner always packed leftover pastries into a paper bag before closing. You can't study on an empty stomach, he liked to say. Amara never argued. Life wasn't glamorous. It was steady, and after everything she had survived, steady felt like a blessing. She first met Kang Min-jae because of a rainstorm. A customer rushed inside just before closing, his charcoal coat soaked through, apologizing for dripping water across the wooden floor. "I'll clean it," he said before anyone could hand him a towel. The cafe owner laughed. "You look expensive enough to hire someone." The stranger smiled. "So I've been told." Amara handed him a cloth anyway. "You'll only spread it around." He looked at her for a second before laughing softly. "Then I suppose I should let the expert handle it." She didn't recognize him. Not then. To her, he was simply another polite customer who ordered black coffee without sugar and spent nearly an hour reading a worn paperback instead of staring at his phone. When the cafe closed, the rain had become heavier. "You forgot your umbrella," he called. "I never had one." He looked outside. "You'll be drenched." "I've survived worse." Something about the way she said it made him stop smiling. Without another word, he placed his umbrella between them. "We can share." "I don't even know your name." "Kang Min-jae." She nodded. "Amara." Neither of them realized that one ordinary walk through the rain would change 2 families forever. Over the next 4 months, chance kept placing them in each other's lives. The same cafe, the same quiet streets, the same weekend art market where Amara admired paintings she couldn't afford. Min-jae never mentioned his company, never mentioned magazine covers, never mentioned private helicopters or boardrooms. He asked about her classes. She asked about the novel he was reading. He admitted he had never learned to cook. She confessed she burned rice twice a month. Felt normal, wonderfully normal, until one Saturday afternoon. Amara arrived at the cafe to find 6 black luxury vehicles parked outside. Men in tailored suits stood with discreet earpieces. The cafe owner nearly dropped a tray. "Mr. Kang," he whispered, "What is all this?" One of the security men answered. The chairman insisted. Amara slowly turned toward Min-jae. "You didn't tell me." He looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I was hoping you wouldn't find out like this." "Find out what?" He sighed. "My family owns Kang Global." Silence. Even the espresso machine seemed louder. Amara knew the name. Everyone did. Shipping, technology, hotels, hospitals, billions. She looked back at the convoy. "You walked me home in the rain." "Yes." "You drank $3 coffee." "Yes." "You let me believe you were ordinary." I wanted one place where I could be. For the first time since meeting him, Amara didn't know what to say. Their relationship changed after that. Not because of money, because of attention. Photographers appeared. Anonymous articles surfaced online. A university classmate suddenly asked suspicious questions about her. Someone searched her apartment while she was at work. Nothing was stolen, but everything had been moved just enough to let her know someone had been there. Min-jae was furious. "I'll increase security." "No. They're watching you. I don't want strangers following me." "They won't be strangers. They will to me." He fell silent. That night, for the first time, he realized there were problems money couldn't solve. 3 weeks later, Amara discovered she was pregnant. She stared at the test for nearly 10 minutes before whispering, "Oh," not because she wasn't happy, because she understood how complicated happiness could become. She decided to tell Min-jae the following evening. She never got the chance. Breaking news interrupted every television in the university cafeteria. Kang Global chairman suffers massive stroke. Within hours, Min-jae disappeared into emergency board meetings, family obligations, and corporate chaos. His messages became shorter, not colder, just exhausted. "I'll explain everything soon. I miss you. Please wait for me." She did, until someone else arrived first. An elegant woman in her 70s stepped into the bookstore cafe one rainy afternoon. She introduced herself simply. "I am Chairwoman Kang." The room suddenly felt much smaller. She looked at Amara with practiced politeness. "My grandson cares for you." Amara nodded cautiously. "I care for him too." The older woman smiled. "But caring is not always enough." She slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a one-way airline ticket, and enough money to change anyone's life. Except Amara wasn't interested. She quietly closed the envelope. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else." The chairwoman studied her. "No, I know exactly who you are." She stood. "I hope, for everyone's sake, you reconsider." As the older woman walked away, Amara rested her hand over her stomach. For the first time, she realized this wasn't just about love anymore. It was about a child who hadn't even taken her first breath. And somewhere inside the Kang family, people had already begun deciding who that child belonged to. The envelope remained on the cafe table long after Chairwoman Kang had walked away. Amara didn't touch it again. When the owner returned from the kitchen carrying fresh bread, he noticed her distant expression. "Bad news?" he asked gently. She forced a small smile. "Not yet." But deep inside, she knew something had changed. Not because she feared the Kang family. Because she understood people who had spent generations protecting power rarely accepted the word no. Min-jae called just after midnight. His voice sounded rough. "I finally escaped the board meeting." "You sound exhausted." "I feel exhausted." For a few moments they spoke about ordinary things. The weather, her classes, the old bookstore owner who had started teaching her Korean proverbs. Neither wanted to burden the other. Finally, Amara took a slow breath. "There's something I need to tell you." At that exact moment another voice interrupted him. "Vice Chairman, they're waiting." Min-jae sighed. "I have to go back. It's important." "I know." His voice softened. "Tomorrow. Promise. No interruptions. I'll hold you to that. I love you." The words came so naturally that neither of them realized it was the first time either had said them aloud. "I love you too," she whispered. The line disconnected. Tomorrow never came. The following morning, every financial network in Korea carried the same headline. Kang Global announces emergency leadership transition. Min-jae had become acting chairman overnight. Interviews, shareholders, government officials, international investors. His life disappeared behind cameras and closed doors. His assistant politely informed Amara that all personal meetings had been postponed indefinitely. She understood, or at least she tried to. 2 weeks later, her morning sickness became impossible to hide. Dr. Lee smiled after reviewing the ultrasound. The baby is healthy. Amara looked at the tiny heartbeat flickering across the monitor. Her eyes filled with tears. Can I hear it again? The room filled with the rapid rhythm. A sound so small, yet powerful enough to rearrange an entire future. She left the hospital smiling, until she noticed a black sedan parked across the street. The same sedan followed her bus for 3 stops, then disappeared. The next day it returned. So did another. They never approached, never spoke. They simply watched. One evening she walked directly toward the vehicle. The driver immediately stepped out. He bowed respectfully. Miss Okafor, who sent you? I cannot answer that. Are you protecting me or watching me? A pause. Sometimes those become the same assignment. Her stomach tightened. I don't need either. The driver lowered his eyes. I hope one day you'll understand. He got back inside. The car drove away, leaving Amara with far more questions than answers. 3 days later, she finally reached Min-jae. He arrived at her apartment almost an hour after sunset, wearing the same suit he had clearly been working in all day. The moment she opened the door, he smiled with visible relief. I've missed you. Then he noticed her expression. What happened? Instead of answering, she took his hand, placed it gently against her stomach. He looked confused, until she handed him the ultrasound photograph. For several seconds, he simply stared. His lips parted. His breathing slowed. He looked from the picture, back to her, then back again. Our baby. She nodded. Our baby. For the first time in years, Kang Min-jae forgot every board meeting, every billion-dollar contract, and every responsibility waiting on his phone. He pulled her into his arms so carefully it was almost reverent. I thought I'd lost everything these past weeks. You didn't. A tear escaped before he could stop it. I've never been happier. Amara laughed softly. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten me. I could never. He kissed her forehead. Then his expression changed. What is it? She walked to the dining table and placed the airline ticket beside the untouched envelope. They came. His smile disappeared. Who? Your grandmother. He opened the envelope. His face drained of color. I never authorized this. I know. You know? Because she never threatened me. Amara looked directly into his eyes. She acted like someone who was completely certain she didn't need your permission. Silence settled between them. Min-jae slowly folded the ticket. I'm sorry. You didn't do it. No. But they're my family. He looked out the window for a long moment. When I was 12, my grandfather told me something. What? In this family, love is important. Blood is essential. He looked back at Amara. I thought he meant loyalty. Quiet pause. I think he meant ownership. The realization hurt more than he expected. The weeks passed quietly, or at least they appeared to. Min-jae spent every free evening with Amara. He learned how to assemble a crib after watching instructional videos 3 times. He burned soup twice trying to cook. He attended every medical appointment he could. He insisted on carrying every grocery bag. Whenever Amara reminded him she wasn't fragile, he smiled. I know. Then stop treating me like porcelain. I'm practicing. For what? He looked toward the tiny crib standing beside the bedroom wall. For being someone's father. At 38 weeks, Dr. Lee requested another examination. The baby was growing well. But after the appointment, she asked Min-jae to remain behind. There are additional documents? He asked. She hesitated. Not from the hospital. She locked the office door before speaking again. This morning representatives from Kang Holdings requested access to the maternity floor. His eyes narrowed. They said they were preparing enhanced security. They lied. Dr. Lee handed him copies of several emails. One sentence stood out. Immediate neonatal transfer following delivery. Another. Mother to be relocated to recovery before contact. Min-jae read every line twice. His hands remained perfectly still. Only his voice changed. Who approved this? They claimed the family's legal department already had. He looked up. When was I supposed to learn about this? Dr. Lee didn't answer. She didn't need to. He already knew. Never. The plan had never included him. For the second time in his life, the people carrying his family name had made life-changing decisions while assuming his silence. Only this time, the decision involved his daughter. He carefully folded the documents. Please don't tell anyone you've shown me these. Dr. Lee nodded. What are you going to do? Min-jae looked toward the maternity ward through the glass window. His daughter hadn't even been born yet, and someone was already trying to decide who deserved to hold her first. They think they're protecting the Kang family. His jaw tightened. They've forgotten something. What? He looked back at the doctor. My daughter is not an inheritance. She is a child, and no one, not even my own family, will decide her future without her mother's permission. The drive back from the hospital was unusually quiet. Rain tapped gently against the windshield as Seoul's evening lights blurred into streaks of gold and white. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. Finally, Amara broke the silence. You've been holding the steering wheel the same way for 10 minutes. Min-jae glanced down. His knuckles had turned pale. He loosened his grip and let out a slow breath. I keep thinking about those documents. So am I. He looked at her briefly before returning his eyes to the road. I spent years believing I understood my family. And now, I understand the company. He paused. I'm no longer sure I understand the people. That night, neither of them slept much. Amara sat in the nursery, gently rocking in the old wooden chair they had bought from a second-hand shop. The room wasn't extravagant. Soft yellow walls, a small bookshelf, tiny socks folded neatly inside a basket. It looked like a home, not a showroom. Min-jae stood quietly in the doorway. You're thinking. I always think before I decide something important. He walked over and knelt beside her. Tell me, if your family comes tomorrow with lawyers. She rested both hands on her stomach. I won't spend my daughter's first hour arguing. You won't have to. She looked at him carefully. You can't promise that. I can promise I'll stand beside you. She smiled faintly. That's different. It is. He reached for her hand. And it's the only promise I know I can always keep. The following afternoon, Min-jae walked into Kang Global's executive tower carrying a thin blue folder. The board members assumed it contained financial reports. Didn't. Chairwoman Kang was already seated. So, she said calmly, the hospital has informed you. They didn't. A brief silence settled over the room. My doctor did. Several directors shifted uneasily. Min-jae placed the folder on the table. I'll ask once. His voice remained calm. Who authorized legal custody documents concerning my daughter? No one answered. The chairwoman folded her hands. You are allowing emotion to cloud necessity. My daughter is not a necessity. She is the future of this family. No. He met her eyes without raising his voice. She is the future of her own life. One elderly director cleared his throat. The intention was simply to ensure stability. For whom? The child. Min-jae slowly opened the blue folder. Inside were signed documents. Not custody papers. Resignation letters. I've spent 15 years expanding this company. He looked around the room. But if remaining here requires me to become the kind of father my own grandfather respected. He pushed the documents toward them. Then you've chosen the wrong successor. Every face in the room changed. You would resign? Someone whispered. I would leave today. Even the chairwoman's expression hardened. You would abandon your responsibility? My first responsibility arrives when my daughter takes her first breath. 3 days later, just before sunrise, Amara felt the first contraction. She looked across the bedroom. Min-jae. He sat upright immediately. It's time. She nodded. I think our little girl has made her decision. 45 minutes later, they arrived at the hospital. There were no television cameras, no convoy, only one family car, exactly as Amara had requested. Dr. Lee greeted them with a reassuring smile. Everything looks good. As nurses prepared the delivery room, another contraction made Amara squeeze Min-jae's hand. You can let go, he said, trying to smile. I can't. Good. I wasn't asking. Despite the pain, she laughed. Several hours later, a tiny cry filled the room. Every sound disappeared behind it. The nurse carefully lifted the newborn. A healthy baby girl. Amara's tears came instantly. So that's your voice. Min-jae couldn't speak. The nurse placed the baby gently against Amara's chest. Their daughter opened her eyes for only a second before settling peacefully. Hello, Amara whispered. We've been waiting for you. A quiet knock interrupted the moment. Dr. Lee stepped to the door. 2 senior attorneys stood outside. Neither crossed the threshold. One held a folder. The other looked uncomfortable. We were instructed to deliver legal paperwork, he said. Before anyone could move, Min-jae walked to the doorway. He accepted the folder, opened it, read the first page, then closed it again. He looked at both attorneys. My daughter is 5 minutes old. Neither man replied. He handed the folder back. Return these. We were instructed. I know who instructed you. His voice remained respectful. Tell them something from me. What should we say? He glanced back toward Amara, who was smiling down at their daughter. Tell them they have mistaken love for control. The attorneys lowered their heads. Without another word, they turned and walked away. Later that evening, after the visitors had left and the hallway had finally grown quiet, Amara watched Min-jae sitting beside the hospital crib. He wasn't checking emails. He wasn't answering business calls. He was simply watching his daughter sleep. You've been there for an hour. I know. What are you thinking? He smiled without looking away. I spent years building buildings people called landmarks. He gently touched one tiny hand with his finger. This, his daughter wrapped her fingers around it instinctively, is the first thing I've ever built that taught me how small I really am. Amara reached for his hand. I've made a decision. He turned toward her. What kind of decision? I don't want our daughter to grow up choosing between 2 worlds. He listened quietly. I want her to know Nigeria and Korea. I want her to speak both languages. She will. I want her to know that her worth never depended on a family name. Min-jae nodded. And I want her to learn that from both of us. A smile slowly spread across Amara's face. Then I think we've finally started becoming the parents she deserves. Outside the hospital window, the first light of morning stretched across the Seoul skyline. It wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of a quieter one, built not on power, but on trust, one ordinary day at a time. If the story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the Afro K Tales, and tell us in the comments. What mattered more to you, the billionaire walking away from power, or Amara choosing to build a family instead of a battle? Until the next story, remember this: the strongest families aren't built by the people with the most influence. They're built by the people who choose every single day to put love before control.